My name is Ala Abdulmajid, and if you were to ask me where I'm from, I would simply say Palestine. I remember the first time I told my best friends where I was from, and they were very surprised. It's because most people assume that I'm either Hispanic, Italian, or even white. Anyways, I'm not born there, but my parents and their families were, but then became refugees in Lebanon because of the war. Even though I'm born Canadian, my blood is Palestinian. To this day, I've never gone to visit my home country, which is very sad. Throughout my high school years, I would see my friends go on vacation to their homelands and get to experience the fun memories their parents and families once experienced. I mean, I did go to Lebanon, which is also my home as well, but it's not the same because it's not my real home. Most people who ask me where I'm from don't really know or where Palestine even is, which is very surprising to me, but then I became used to it during the years, having to explain. But when I do tell them where it is, they would simply say, "Oh, you mean Israel?" No, not Israel, but yes, the land that everyone calls Israel is Palestine. They just occupied our land from us and renamed it. I mean, how can you rename a land that is already claimed? To this day, Palestinian children cannot experience a childhood of fun or what it means to be a child. Children should not experience a soldier pointing a gun in their faces or even getting beaten for standing up for their mother being harassed by a soldier, or even having to bury their loved ones. So I'm dedicating the rest of this video to Palestinians who will one day return to their homes. One sleepless night, my window broke. My olive tree went up in smoke. I heard the children scream. I heard the war drum beat, gunpowder in the air, dead bodies on the street. It won't take long for the dark clouds to go, for the sun to come out and shine on my home. They raised their flags in blue and white, erected walls in broad daylight. They walk with tanks, they speak with guns. They thought they were God's chosen ones. But they did not know inside of us is a soul that never gives up. Resistance is our key to a door locked up. Palestine is where I belong. It won't take long for the dark clouds to go, for the sun to come out and shine on my home. Palestine is my home.
I don't know that the thought ever crossed my mind when Matt and I met. I had asked God for a partner who was a good guy, and he was who showed up. We dated, I met his family, he met mine, and our relationship got serious. There were no issues with our immediate families, and each of us were accepted into the other's family, and wedding plans were made. 4 years later, our daughter was born, and 5 years after that, our son. When our daughter was around 6 months, I ventured out to a mom and baby group. I was excited to be part of a community, sharing stories and experiences about becoming a mom. Most of the moms there were white with white babies, and there I was, this white blonde with a dark-haired, obviously mixed baby. The first thing people would say to me is, "What is she?" Or, "What is the dad?" Or, "Is she yours?" Is she yours? Really? I never thought I was going to be questioned if my child was in fact my child. I remember being so uncomfortable. None of the other moms were asked these questions about their babies. At the time, I didn't know how to address the issue I had with these questions, so I would just answer, "She's mixed. Her dad is from Barbados, and yes, she's mine." Inside, I felt like, are you kidding me? She's human. She's a child. The dad is a man. The dad is my husband. No, she's not mine. I just really wanted to come to your baby group, so I decided to borrow a baby. I'd like to think the moms and others had the right intention of wanting to get to know me and my child. However, do you usually walk up to the person with a puppy and your first question on approach is whether or not it belongs to the person holding its leash? There's a pride you feel becoming a parent. Whether you've created a beautiful life or committed to raising and loving little lives created by others, your identity involves mother or father, and that child is part of you. I remember being in awe of our daughter. She had a head full of dark hair, big, deep brown eyes, soft, glowing, creamed coffee color skin, a beautiful blend of Matt and I felt the same way when our son was born. Especially when our kids were young, everywhere we went as a family, people would comment how beautiful our children were. In that moment, I felt great joy, but then, quite often, would come the questions and comments. With our baby girl, they questioned how light she was, how she had dark hair but the texture was soft, and so on. When our son was born, there were a few new questions and comments. "Oh, is he darker than her? Are they siblings? Same dad?" As our daughter got older, another issue arose. At 2, she had beautiful curly hair. Now, not only would people ask the questions and make comments, they would help themselves to touching her hair. Once again, my discomfort made my stomach turn, and the anger heated my insides, but I didn't have the words or confidence to respond with action. I learned to style her hair in braids, twists, and other ways, hoping she would see the many things she could do. However, I was conflicted, as I wanted to celebrate her hair, but more often than not, this would draw more attention and more questions. It happened so often, strangers commenting and touching her hair. I could see her shrink in her stroller, almost as a cat shrinks when you go to pet it and it doesn't want to be touched. I had that same uncomfortable feeling I had at the baby group, and I hated that again I didn't know what to say or do. I began to position myself between her and others so I could move her away if they reached for her, but I often found myself agreeing how beautiful her hair was and not protecting her physical space. I remember a day she was at daycare and another child commented and pointed at her hair, asking, "Why is her hair like that?" But this question was different. The question didn't contain judgment, it held curiosity, and the child didn't touch her hair. I responded, "There are different kinds of hair, just like there are different kinds of pasta. Your hair is straight like spaghetti, and hers is curly like rotini." The child answered, "I like rotini, and you have spaghetti hair too." I wished I was able to respond to the adults with questions with the same ease. By now, our daughter was old enough to understand the questions and witness my responses. I realized this was something I needed to accept was going to continue, and I needed to be prepared to respond. The questions weren't going away. I was going to be questioned, and in order for me to ensure my children were comfortable with their identities, I needed to be able to respond effectively. I knew having biracial children was going to mean dealing with questions and judgments, but I have to admit, I didn't prepare myself with how I was going to respond as their white mother, and I don't think we prepared ourselves as parents as to how we would ensure they had confidence in their identities to respond to the questions, comments, and actions of others. Perhaps the question, "Are they yours?" tuned me deeper into the fact they would face different experiences, questions, and comments than both Matt or I had faced. So as my children grow, and as new questions and situations come up and have come up, I'm committed to learning, modeling, and educating for them. I'm continually on a journey of learning how I can show up to answer the questions, or not, to put the question back to the questioner and have them think about what and why they are asking. At the end of the day, we're all human. And yes, we're curious, and there's nothing wrong with that. But be kind, have grace. Remember to ask questions that you wouldn't mind being asked yourself. So, yes, I am their mom, and they are my children, Anissa and Jaden.
So, closets, am I right? Not the one you store clothes in, but the way that you have to hide a part of yourself, you know? The way you swallow the truth even if it burns on the way down. In case you haven't guessed it, I've spent a lot of time in these closets, so I'm just gonna come out and say it. I'm an autistic lesbian with severe OCD, and as much as I hated being in these closets, the time around them really fascinates me.
I like the term closet because it feels like you have to wear a costume. Sometimes it's to avoid weird looks. Sometimes it's because I don't feel safe being who I really am. There's been a lot of talk of the gay closet, so I'm not going to be focusing on that today. I'm tired of even talking about pretending to be straight. Instead, I'll be focusing on my other closet, one that took longer to drop, hiding my neurodivergency. It's kind of like a suit. It's tight, it's restricting, and it's really uncomfortable, and I felt like I had to wear it all the time. A lot of people tell me I shouldn't complain, because I'm just functioning enough. And I get that being able to hide who I am is in itself kind of a privilege. I'm not usually having a breakdown. But I don't know how you can take one look at that costume and say it's comfortable. Like, try to imagine wearing something like this to school, to work, sometimes even at home, and knowing one undone button could spell trouble. I have a weird relationship with my disorders, and it's not the same for each one, but over the years it does get easier to accept yourself. Like, my autism? Whether I like it or not, that's me. It's wired into me, a simple fact, a way I've always been and always will be. I process problems differently, I feel things more, and while it means I'm easily overwhelmed and sometimes kind of awkward, it lets me think outside the box and get especially passionate about the things I enjoy. It's like I run on a different software. It looks strange to a newcomer, but it works for me. I try to have a little pride in it. I don't know if I'd be who I am without it, or what my art would be like, and I don't really care to find out. But my OCD is different. It's not me, it's something that happened to me. It's not really the disorder people think it is. I like symmetry and alphabetizing things, but OCD isn't why. The main symptom of OCD is something called intrusive thoughts, which is basically a voice in your brain that says whatever it thinks will scare you. It says that you're dying, or worse, that you're a danger to others. I used to stay up late, thinking it was inevitable I'd hurt someone, that I was some kind of timed bomb. There's no pride to that, just a weird seesaw between terror and resignation. It took a long time for me to overcome that, and I overcame it through finding people like me and opening up about my feelings. Sometimes I still struggle with it even today, but that's just part of the process. Neurodivergency is, even within one person, such a complex set of feelings. Some of us are proud, some of us are getting there, some of us have a case-by-case basis. And people need to know more about how this works so they can be respectful. Please support your neurodivergent friends, family, and acquaintances. And if you're one of us, know that you aren't alone. Every day, it gets easier to be open as the stigma fades. I don't need a closet anymore. And every day, I hope more people feel safe opening up about who they are. It's a nice thought, isn't it?
I have started and stopped and written at length, but it always seems to fall short. Perhaps I leave too much out, or maybe it feels as if, regardless what is said, it pales in comparison to the actual life lived and the sadness left behind in your passing. When Baba passed, things were never the same between us. I was young and sensitive, and you were doing the best you could with the little that you had. You worked blood, sweat, and tears to make sure my sister and brothers and I were okay. You lavished us with affection and elaborate home-cooked Egyptian meals, prepared with the utmost care and devotion, while singing to the classics. At least they were great artists according to you, and you would challenge anyone who said otherwise. You were principled and fair, with a deep loathing for injustice. You instilled so much of that and the love for people in us. Countless times I would see you quick to forgive a misgiving against you. I would not be that forgiving, but you would remind me that we all make mistakes and deserve chances to make amends. The important thing for you was to acknowledge your faults and shortcomings and work to overcome them. And that for you was a beautiful and powerful transformative thing. You would remind me there are many ways to plant seeds, in my own life and even in others. I didn't take into account the extent of your sacrifices or the deep isolation and loneliness you must have felt at being displaced. So far away from your home and your family, with an unsurmountable task of raising 4 kids on your own. You worked miracles. I'm so proud of all that you have done. I wish we had more time. Despite at times being your biggest critic, I am forever indebted to you. In fact, I'm your biggest fan. My biggest regret is that I let all the perceived differences stifle the most selfless love I will ever know. No one can love you and teach you about selfless love like a mother. No one. Selfless love is the most valuable lesson and blessing of your life. I am so lucky and so grateful to be your daughter.
October 2nd, 2016, the perspectives of my family members' lives have changed forever. We had just moved to Kamloops just over a year ago for my father's law program to become a lawyer. My dad was playing soccer for the TRU soccer team. He was scoring goals, but he felt sick and was throwing up. Even when my mom, sister, and I came home, my dad couldn't even speak. He wrote down a few simple words, saying that he couldn't catch his breath. As we drove to the hospital, something didn't seem right. He was leaning forward in the front passenger seat of my mom's CRV. When we got to the hospital, the workers told us to follow the yellow line. We got to the end of the yellow line, and waiting for us was a door. My parents tried to open the door as my father fell to the ground. Right before my eyes, my dad had a cardiac arrest. I could see the tears in my mom's eyes as she was bellowing for help. Seeing that made me tear up and ask for help. But then the door at the end of the yellow line had opened, and the workers lifted my dad onto a stretcher, and my mom went along with them. So a sweet old lady took my sister and I into a waiting room. In that waiting room, I was bawling my eyes out. I mean, who could blame me? My father just fell to the ground, and I had no explanation. After a little while, a social worker took us into a room, gave Humera and I snacks, and even gave me colors to do my homework. After some time in that room, my mom came. She said my dad just had a heart attack. When we went to go see our dad, we obviously had small talk, hugs, kisses, but as we were leaving to go get stuff from home, my dad asked if we can bring his laptop and maybe some books. That was how committed he was to become a lawyer. After a month of family and visits to the hospital, my dad went back to Thompson Rivers University to study law. 3 years later, my dad passed the bar exam and got his license to practice law. Zain Ali is living proof that you can be and do anything no matter how many obstacles pass by you. He sacrificed everything and moved his family to Kamloops. Anything and everything could have gone wrong, and we would have nothing. But he kept on pushing, and he made it.
Early on, I had a deep passion to connect, care, and change the world for the better. But going from childhood to teenagehood to adulthood, I forgot bits and pieces of this dream and really myself and my voice. The dream got shuffled in the homework, maintaining relationships, work, and what I thought was just the busyness of life. Speaking to others, I know this story is not unique to me. But a couple of years ago, I had a yearning, a calling to connect back to myself. You get to a time in life where you pause and you think, is there more? What else can I create and what matters to me? What does this world need? I began to realize that as much as I wanted to go out and journey out and create possibilities and make the much needed change in this world, I needed to journey back into the depths of myself. Change starts with me. I am the foundation that I stand on, and I need to check on it in order to build my house of dreams on top of it. I must go in before I can go out. These past few months specifically, the depths of my journey have been some of the deepest, richest, most transformative times of growth. I know it will ultimately come to serve a better, deeper purpose for myself in the world. I have grown in so many ways. Never before have I paid more attention and been more aware of everything in my life. I pay much more attention to my relationships with the world, which to me is a necessary first step to bring healing and justice to this world. Also crucial has been my awareness of the historical, economic, political, sociocultural, psychological, and environmental factors shaping our world and ourselves. It is now part of my work to heal the parts of us that have been hurt by these forces. I am deeply, deeply aware and really care for the relationships to others and the people around me. I seek to come from a place of love and be in a place of dialogue, which requires me to be present and deeply listen. I let go of my binary thinking, and I make room for life's beautiful paradoxes and stories that make me stop and think. We are all interconnected. I realize that listening, confirming, and including you in my circle of care is important. And being there for your healing and growth is part of me showing up for my own. Compassion and empathy are the main tools I build a community with now. I hold so sacred the knowledge I've received from my lived experiences and feelings, and listen so carefully to what my body and spirit have to offer just as much as my mind. I live for words like care, love, joy, heart, community. I see the extraordinary in the everyday and the everyday in the extraordinary. With an open-hearted way, I am ready to meet what comes and for the possibilities that I built.
Growing up, I was surrounded by politics. My dad was very involved in the community, and politics was a huge part of my family. However, very early on, I noticed that Muslim women weren't very involved. Every time I went to a political event, I would be one of the only female Muslims there. The very first time I remember going to a political event was in 2015. There was a Meet the Candidates forum for the federal election. Although I wasn't eligible to vote because I was only 12 at the time, I still went. It was being held at the mosque, and I went early with my dad to help set up. We set up 2 sections, one for men and one for women. The event started, and I waited for other women and girls to show up. Eventually, 2 other women showed up. Both were under the age of 20, and that's about it. The men's section was packed. There were no empty seats, but the women's section was filled with empty seats. Now let's fast forward a couple years to the 2019 federal election. Canada's first female Muslim cabinet minister is here in Port Coquitlam. I go with my dad to meet her. This time, there were a few more females at the event. Now I have some hope. Maybe things have changed. Maybe this time around, Muslim women will come out to events and will learn about what's happening in their communities, and they will express their thoughts and their opinions. A few months later, there's another Meet the Candidates at the mosque. I have a late class that day, and even though I'm still not old enough to vote, I go after class. I walk in and I don't see a single female there other than the candidates and their volunteers. Over halfway into the event, one other lady shows up. If you don't vote and you don't express your thoughts and opinions, you can't expect politicians to know what you want. Who else will know what Muslim women want other than them? If we aren't actively involved, then no one will pay attention to us. If we are involved in our communities, people will pay attention to us. But the only way to make that happen is by going out and talking to your local politicians and getting involved. Even though the Canadian Muslim community is so large and we have the numbers to decide who can win the election, Muslims are less likely to vote than any other faith community. According to MuslimLink.ca, Muslim voter turnout rate hovers around 46.5%. So before the next election, remember that the election results are determined by the people who showed up. Nobody can deprive you of your right to vote except for you, and we as a community speak the loudest when we vote. So don't even think for a second that the election didn't concern you, because it does, in a countless number of ways.